I have been contemplating, I guess, existence, life, all the whys for actually, I don't know, a long time now. And I think that those questions come up more and more the more I listen to or engage with the work of other people who are asking those very same questions that I might not have been actually, they might not have been in my awareness at some point. It's like, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so I'm really into exploring those ideas and themes and topics just in my own world, in my own life. And perhaps that started when I became a yoga teacher or did my yoga teacher training, you know, way back. Or maybe that happened. And I only did that training because I knew I needed it for my heart and my soul and my family and my own evolution. My friend actually said to me, she was teaching it, her name was Jan. And she said, I went there for tea and we reconnected after some time of not connecting through the community that we were part of. We were sort of on the fringes where we would intersect sometimes because of our children, and our children were getting older. And her life was changing, and she started to teach this. She put together this amazing transformational program. And she said, you need to take this. And I wasn't looking to become a teacher. Actually, I only teach, just like for free and the concepts, and I embody it in my life, and I experience yoga in my body and in the way I think now about the world. And so it was quite a transformative year spent in that program with her and all the people in it. Anyway, this isn't about yoga, but I think it was around that time that this stuff opened up more, and it became less about the psychology that I was sort of trapped in, parsing out and pulling into pieces, and not really able to integrate into the whole, and not really realizing that the psychology is really the costume that we're wearing, and it's very important. It's how we express to the world, but it can also shroud and cloud what really is lying underneath, which takes these heroes' journeys to, kind of punch out of that, and then deepen into our unique genius. It's kind of like how I like to imagine it. So those are other topics we can talk about at other times, but I started to get really, I don't know, okay, it's not started. My interest and, of these explorations deepened and also at the same time widened as the years went on. So I did this training, and I think that was part of it. I think part of it was starting to meditate, to focus on breath work and breathing, and really connecting with nature, which I had been doing probably my whole life, just seeking it, because I grew up in the city, but we lived, sort of on the outskirts. So I was able to just hop on my bike and go out and be away from the chatter of this reality into like what life actually is. And so there was always this call, but I wasn't I didn't go on camps, and I wasn't a camper, and I didn't really have the opportunity for that. And whatever opportunity I provided for myself, it was more like, what I could access from my neighborhood. And, but then, when my children were born, they grew up on riverbanks and in libraries, and there was so much space, and I'm going to do another episode about that, but there was so much space for this reconnection with self, others, our earth, the world, even the universe, the stars, all of that, our history, and, archaeology. We explored everything in those realms and in that light with that, I suppose, not lens on it, but the openness to the bigness of all of these things, not as topics to learn by rote or memorize, but experiences that they were able to have, and I was able to have with my children through my relationship with them and my insatiable passion for living and joyfully living and expressively living. And sort of like letting go of all of these other rules that I was taught from just culture, society, family, shoulds and should nots, and what reality is. This is your reality, and this is what that is. And from, people don't really know that, like if we think of one reality being everyone's reality, well, that's unrealistic. Yeah. It's the dreamers who are realistic. Chew on that one, right? Okay, so through this exploration, it became part of my, whatever I would say, what would I say? How I contribute to the world, how I, contribute, I am in the world. And that is a co-creative process. So I started to really like bring forth a lot of these ideas to the coaching I did, and I've done wellness coaching, and I used to call it like functional medicine, like in that realm, but also holistic. It was not just those like one particular lineage or understanding of body, of health, of wellness, but it was more like an eclectic gathering point of all of it. So we don't leave out any layer of our being. We don't leave out any aspect of what and who we are. It's all important. It's all important. So, and some of the most, I suppose, like, I don't want to use the word important here now, but I'm just going to do that because we have a limited language. But one of the most important things, or the most, is this question of why, who, and why and who, why I am, who I am, how I, and people like to use the word serve. Some people are, like they don't like the word serve because it's sort of servitude, and that's not what that means. It doesn't mean slavery. It doesn't mean everything else comes before you. It doesn't mean martyrdom. It means contribution. Yeah. So it's about. So anyway, so I come up with infographics. I make things that are visual as well to illustrate the stuff that's kind of going through, the realizations that are coming up for me as epiphany. And the way that I can make sense of it, sense making is to tell a story, to speak it out, as you probably know if you're following this post or these blog posts or my podcasts. It helps me to verbalize, to write things down, to put on my poet's eye, strike that bullseye with my poet's eye, and both expand to catch everything in that net and to weave things together. And the weaving actually makes it sort of organized and simpler to make some sense out of it. It's sense making instead of senseless. So we're sensitive to it rather than insensitive. Oh, I love words. Okay, so I made this infographic and I've renamed it a million times, and I called it my iceberg model in like the, I guess, coaching speak. And it doesn't really hit the mark that well in what it actually is, because yes, it's a model, I suppose. It's something that I've, put together from all sorts of, like, everything sort of in my awareness right now that I think is relevant to this question of why, who, and what, we are. And so, and I think that when we do that, the parsing out, the piecing it off, the over analysis actually takes us further away from the answers. The answer, is it an answer? From the experience of just being. And it's stressful, and it's, people can feel distress. And, but I think that to recognize all of the parts of the whole and always be reminded to integrate all those parts into the whole, that's where you have those epiphanies bubble forth. The mind's out of the way. That small m mind. The big M mind is, is the one that's picking this stuff up. And the weaver, and all of us can weave this together. So I use this idea of the iceberg, and I think everybody knows by now, has heard that quote that says, you are, I'm going to misquote it. I know I am, because I've only said it a million times, but I'm going to misquote it because I'm recording. But you are not a drop in the ocean, but the ocean in a single drop. So yes, I love metaphor, and I think that the ocean is the ultimate, like my favorite metaphor for life itself, And so here's why. So that idea, and it's becoming cliche now because it's so said so much that people stop understanding the meaning of it. I think that that's what happens a lot with cliche. And I've been spending a lot of time going back to old cliches that I just didn't even consider to be wise or any kind of wisdom. They're just things people say. And they're just packed with wisdom, just overflowing, brimming jewel chests with like flowing gems, they're just packed with meaning. If we can return to what that initial, if we can connect with it, I suppose. Maybe even connect with it through a story that had that outcome, like of that realization come about. So when you say, I am the ocean in a single drop, well, that means to me, there's everything to know about life, to be in life, in every single minutia, every single tiny little micro detail. The macro is in the micro. So when you go and you sit in nature, right, you notice the animals move back and forth. You watch the leaves rustle. You listen to the water burbling. You float in the ocean. Those very things return you in a felt embodied experience to what life is. And so you can let go of the overcomplication and the ruminations of the mind and, the distress of feeling like you don't know when knowing isn't in the mind, the small m mind. Knowing is in the heart. It's in the felt experience. It's in the body. You will feel it calling you home. So when I made this infographic, it's a picture of an iceberg. And we know this about icebergs, most of it is under the water. And so the ocean represents life itself. It's a metaphor. I don't want to even say represents. It's a metaphor and for life itself. And the reason why it's such a vast and beautiful metaphor for life itself was because when they're in the ocean, you don't always realize you're in it unless you are on the surface, kind of seeing. And but when we're swimming in the ocean, it's all that exists. And beneath the surface, okay, so here's the surface of the ocean when we feel all of that subconscious stuff, and we're conscious, our head's out of the ocean, and we're conscious of what we're feeling, maybe fish nibbling at our toes, the coolness of the water, and all the things that affect our being. But we're also being affected by what's up top, and we are conscious of that. And what's for me, what is sort of like the environment that the ocean exists in is our reality. Like some might call it our matrix. And a matrix is not a bad thing. It's just the mama, the womb in which we exist, right? But you can't stay in the womb. You incubate there, you live there, you exist, you create there. And then those creations come out, So then there's this whole contraction, expansion, but we'll talk about that another time. So also what makes up this whole like existence is our story. And we'll talk about that another time. I talk about story a lot. And the dreamscape, which is part of that story creation. So, so you see on the surface things that can actually almost pollute. I don't know, I don't use the word pollute because everything in existence is important, even if we consider it to be bad. Even things that are challenging, challenges are actually gateways to our gifts. But on that surface, sometimes there are things that we can get confused with being the totality of what we are, but they are really the makeup of all of our experience so far, what we can understand so far, what we've been taught. Some people might call this process, like chipping away the marble to reveal the angel, right, of the sculpture. We've heard that before. Or some people talk about chipping away the concrete on the golden Buddha. So it is part of what we are experiencing in life. Yet if we see what those are for what they are, we can sort of allow the waters to clear. And so what we allow to clear are things like aspects of ourselves. We integrate them and we understand them, and we know that that's just part of this picture. Our parts, our protectors, our exiles, the firefighters, managers, our emotions that we have, feelings, like the scripts that we keep playing in our minds over and over, the old stories that we tell that we recreate in the future. Story is important with a capital S, but the small story is just a remnant of the past. So we get to choose our behaviors, shadows, things we might call demons and triggers. Man, I was so triggered the other day. I was like, who is that? I don't know who that person is. There's some healing that needs to happen right there. The traumas, the woundings, and I don't want to, we're not all a bunch of like, wounded animals, going off to die in the wilderness. It's not about that. Wounding is actually the beginning of coming out of something else. And I'm not even going to go into that right now. It's way too much to unpack. So I totally will do that in another musing. Our thoughts, right? Thoughts are things. Choose the good ones. Thank you, Wayne Dyer. Ego, mind, identity. How do we identify with what's going on in our mind? Or how are we identifying with our bodies? These are questions. It's not like you can't or don't or won't or that it doesn't serve you. These are all things to recognize, to see what serves you and what is scum on the surface, clouding you from what and who you are. I'm going to get to what and who you are soon. Conditioning, programs, patterns, belief systems, all of those things that can be unconscious. All other things, under that unconscious, in that unconscious area of our being, there's also the subconscious, superconscious, right? Like that's all there too. That's all like kind of, how we're operating with all of these scripts and all these things going on under the surface that, affect the waters above. There's storms and there's big waves, and some of them will, gently bring us to shore, and some of them will set us off into the middle of the ocean, moorless, Some of them will churn it all up. Some of them will threaten death. Some of them will actually kill us. And though, part of that, those forces, those things that we're not always thinking about, that we can allow to sort of like help to steer the ship, or help us to be the surfer, which is one of the metaphors for life I love, is that we are not trying to fight. There's a lot of talk about the warrior. I have a warrior in me. And right now, though, I want to be the surfer. and being able to ride the waves that come, because they will come. It's sort of the point. So beneath that, that can bubble forth with sort of clearing those things away is, and being, just being, in meditation, or living a life of awareness, using the world as having the world be your oracle, being like eyes wide open to everything, every symbol, every metaphor, every synchronicity, that you can connect and make sense of everything. It's not in the mind, it's in the experience, it's in the awareness and openness to all that is. And it's just fun. It's just a playground. It's another metaphor I love. So, okay, so I'm circling, but I'm getting down. I'm spiraling into this sort of super conscious of us, like this inner guide. It's intuition. It's where the unique self lies, our unique genius. Because it's important that there are all of us to co-create. We're both the result of and the co-creators of our existence, which is sort of a mind-bending idea. But if you consider all of existence as one thing, when you're in it, you can't really see it. But when you are one single point in that, you have your very own unique perspective of what that is. So it's the universe knowing itself. That is you. You are the ocean, as well as being a single drop. You're both. So here lies your genius, like your expression, like how how you serve, what you bring forth, your co-creative contribution, the soul, right? And your gifts. And you are the source of life itself, because you are the architect. You're the story maker. You're both the protagonist as well as the person telling the story. So I'm gonna rein it in, and this whole 22 minutes was actually like introducing what I wanted to get to. And so in the books, in my series of books, one of the first things I created was a map to help anchor me in this place that I was, from where these stories would take place, And in the East and West, and I don't want to yin and yang, right? We need all of it. But I separated them into the East and West. And of course, the East is more of the mystical knowledge with a capital K, learning through love. And the West is still learning through pain, and we can learn through pain. It's just a question of whether or not we want to, and whether or not we feel we have to. And so the West is full of illusion and delusion and this belief that that's the only reality that can exist. And so a lot of the places are named as such, and they have sort of like an opposite counterpart, in each of the realms. And so, and it's not always opposite. Sometimes it's a shift in perspective that changes the entire reality of the people there. So here's one of my biggest examples of that, the ocean. And so the ocean in the West is dangerous. It's dark and it's deep, and all the things we don't know, we fear. It's like you're swimming around, you're more or less, you're vulnerable in this huge ocean. You can drown, you're grasping at things to keep you afloat. There are sharks and sea creatures that could take you under or bite you. It's like everybody sort of felt like that when they're thrilled and jumped into some deep water when they were a kid or something. It's that feeling. Oh my, I'm cold, I'm scared, please let me find the edge of the shore. Get me out. Get me out. But this is all I know. So that ocean is called the black unknown. And it's a perspective of the life that you're living. If it's fear-based, and it's not, I don't mean fear like normal fear. Fear will tell you, get out of the road, man. Like if there's a horn blaring, move. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean when it is a fear of the unknown without actually illuminating what is beneath the surface. And if it is a sea monster, then you swim that way. And if it isn't, you know, and you don't have to fear it. It's a clarity. So the black unknown is living in that, like the ocean itself is representative of that way of, that perspective of life itself. And then in the east, the ocean is called, same ocean, okay? It's called the deep uncharted. And so in this model that I've created, this teaching tool, or this like a tool for me to help myself understand better, the depth, so what we are doing, we're surfing the waves, right? We're digging for, we're deep diving for the sunken ships, the sunken ships, sorry, I'm losing my lips. The sunken ships that are full of treasure. We're diving into the cave, hypnosis cave or something. We're down in Mariana's Trench, like we are going in, and it is a whole new world down there full of teeming with life. But we can be afraid of the dark. It gets darker as we go down there. We can, until we learn how to see in the dark and breathe underwater. So that ocean is the deep uncharted. And here we are in life charting the depths, making our own maps of it. With compasses that maybe we were gifted with some guidance, but it's always, you always want to go like where you're being led. I'm just imagining someone with their flippers on, just like, but I want to go this way. Something calls me over here. And it's infinite, but it's not scary in its infinite nature. It evokes curiosity and adventure and like a joy in the process of discovery, of play. Okay. And that's where the wisdom, the mysticism, the being okay with the great mysteries lie. Like that, in those depths. And you can come up and pop up and break the surface with what you discovered in the depths. So there's this huge difference in perspective of the ocean, represented in how people view it and how they experience it and what happens in their lives because of that. So we have the black unknown and now my stomach's rumbling. I need to eat. And the deep uncharted. So I don't know, have fun with that and play with that. There's a lot of ocean scenes through my books, a lot. And I love writing those. And you're going to see a lot of that, throughout. You'll see a lot of it. There's some in book 1, and there's a lot more in book 3, where it's just, I go ham in the ocean. So watch for Eric's story coming there. All right. So I'm done musing, and thank you for playing.